Hi guys, I'm starting a series of video based on the book Alien Interview. I'm sorry about my accent. The information from the footnotes would be disappeared on the screen in this video. You can easily read them. I don't tell you for a long time, our time is limit. We're getting started. Acknowledgements. My sincerest thanks to the enthusiastic, insightful editorial support of Markel and Brenda. Thank you very much to all of the diligent and unselfish work of the owners, staff and timeless contributors and editors of Wikipedia origin, upon which a material in this book relies heavily for indications, documentary support of many of the footnoted IMDs cited is the next of the transcripts and the comments from Matilda O'Donnell McEnroy. Disclaimer: as far as the detail of the book Alien Interview is concerned, and for all practical purposes, the content of the book is a work of fiction. The editor makes no claim to the factuary of the content, and in fact cannot prove that the alleged other actually ever exist. I write some of the dates, location, persons, and incidents described may be factual or based on fact. There is no evidence to authenticate that equally as many may be subjective, contrary to this of the author. All the information, notes, and transcripts received by the editor are contained in their complete written form as represented in the book. The editor is not longer in possession of any original documents or copies or original documents from the author. I agree, Mrs. McElroy. Some material content in the book may have similarities to Earth's philosophies as the variety of these are too numerous to list, and bear too many fundamental similarities to be easily differentiated. Alright, the book discusses the origin of the universe, time to ask, of the physical universe, paranormal activities of immortal and or extraterrestrial beings, aliens or gods. Is it in no way the intention of the editor to represent, endorse, forward, or assume the viewpoint of the other, any political doctrine, economic vested interest, scientific hypothesis, religion's practice, or physically, whether terrestrial or extraterrestrial? The notice and transcript continue the book solely and only the best of the representations and documents provided by the actor, the late Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, unless otherwise specifically annotated by footnotes in the appendix of the book. The editor is not responsible for any assumptions, inferences, or conclusions made by the reader based of the material in this book, which are solely and only the responsibility of the reader. What is true for you is true for you. Lawrence R. Spencer, editor. Forward. We ask as folks who know not our own spirit, where are the hidden traces left by the gods? Rig Veda, Book E, stanza 164, lines 5, REB. Preamble. What greater brutality can be inflicted on anyone than to erase or deny the spiritual awareness, identity, ability, and the memory that the essence of oneself? Lawrence and Spencer, 2008. Dedication. This book is dedicated to all immortal spiritual beings, whether they are aware of themselves as such or not. It is especially dedicated to the wisdom, courage, and integrity of those greater beings, who in various incarnations, at various times during the past, in the present, and into the future, kindle and carry the flame of truth into the darkest corners of the universe. This dedication is not only to the philosophical teachers and the technologies developed by these beings, but to their demonstrated and documented courage to apply their philosophy in the face of overwhelming ignorance, open hostility, and aggressive suppression by lesser beings and by the self-serving vested interests of intergalactic and planetary political, economic, and religion institutions. Though relatively few in number, the profound wisdom and heroic dedication of such beings, and those who share their quest, have been the only effective deterrent to spiritual slavery. Freedom, communication, creativity, trust, and truth for all immortal spiritual beings in this universe is their legacy. The good example set by them is our sanctuary and sustenance. Personal, diligent application of their teachers is our weapon against the dwindling spiral of chaos and oblivion that is the material universe. Lawrence and Spencer. Editorial guidelines used in this book. I have tried not to edit the material I received from Mrs. McElroy, except to the degree necessary to make a logical sequence of the material she mailed to me. Wherever possible, I have quoted or translated her original written notes verbatim. In some instances, I have taken editorial liberty to add other information or supplementary commentary, which I feel will add useful definition or clarification of the information given in the official transcripts, or to her remarks or observation. These appear is a numbered footnote in the appendix at the end of the book. All footnote references, where possible, are copied verbatim from the free Internet Encyclopedia website www.wikipedia.org. If information was not able through Wikipedia.org, I used the popular internet search engine www.google.com to find a website reference that seems most appropriate to the subject matter. Mrs. McElroy did not make a notation of dates in the most of the documents, so I'm not certain that the sequence of material matches the actual sequence of events or sequence of the interviews, except as noticed on the official transcripts themselves. Since it has been 60 years since the day of the interviews, and considering the age of Mrs. McElroy before her death, I reasoned that she did not necessarily have an acute recollection of exact names, dates, and times, except as recorded in the transcripts of July 8th through August 12th, 1947. The material in this book is organized into three different types. The following notation will be used to designate where these appear in this book. 1. Matilda Donna Macro Personal Notes, type font, Times Roman, 12 point. 2. Official transcripts of interview, Cora New, 12 point. 3. Footnote, type font, Arial, 10 point. Bold, the editor. Definitions: vast interest, a spiral or non-spiral plan on a gender which has been clouded. They make it seem like something other than what it actually is. Any person, group of or entity which prevents or controls communication to serve their own purposes, plans, or agenda. Reference, page 37. The Oz Factors by Lawrence and Spencer. Mystery, an enigma or problem involving paradox or apparent contradiction, profound, inexplicable, or secutive quality of character. Reference, W. Merriam-Webster.com. Introduction: The Mystery of UFOs and Extraterrestrials. If you have studied UFO phenomena at all, you are already familiar with the infamous Orson Welles radio broadcast of War of the Worlds and the invasion from Mars. Footnote 1. On October 13, 1948. This fictitious radio dramatization of an invasion of Earth by aliens incited a global UFO and extraterrestrial hysteria long before the UFO crash near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. During the past 60 years, since the alleged Roswell crash, there have been tens of thousands of reports UFO sightings. A global hysteria has emerged from evidence of that is presumed to be extraterrestrial phenomenon. Concurrently, the unrelenting denial of this phenomenon by the US government has precipitated an uninterrupted flurry of accusations, counter-accusations, cover-up conspiracy theories, lunatic fringe speculations, scientific investigations, it's early, ad nauseam, and the Greek mandature and similar arranged close encounters. My first thoughts when I received the package of documents from Mrs. McElroy was, this is just another set of Majestic 12 documents, footnote 2. I am referring to a mysterious package reportedly received by mail in 1984, shortly after the death of the last surviving member of the so-called Majestic 12 committee, alleged to have been organized by President Harry Truman shortly after the Roswell incident in 1947. There are several similarities to the Majestic 12 documents the package I received from Mrs. McElroy. In the case of the former, an envelope was sent from an anonymous sender with no return address. It contained an undeveloped roll of film. That's all. Of the roll of film there were photos of documents that were assumed to be authentic by the recipient and his colleagues who vested interest, i.e. livelihood, depend heavily on attracting public notice and credibility to themselves as leading authorities on the subject of UFO phenomena. They have worked relentlessly since then to discover proof that the documents are authentic. Of course, government agencies deny everything alleged in the documents and anything having to do with the subject of extraterrestrials in general. In addition, the subject has become so thoroughly overwhelmed with obvious false reports, discredited sources, hearsay, manufactured false thoughts, misunderstandings, missing information, added inapplicable information, and a myriad of other conflicting complexities, which had made the subject laughable or unapproachable as a science. This may be intentional and simply a reflection of the general chaos and barbarism that is humanity. As for government denials and cover-ups, the events of September 11, 2001 have made it abundantly apparent to me that the US government has destroyed any vestige of truth the American people and the world may have harbored, even through the Vietnam War. Watergate and many severe betrayals in the honesty of the American government, military and intelligence community by blatantly lying to its own people about almost anything and everything. In spite of vast numbers of UFO sightings, innumerable reports of alien abductions, and close encounters with extraterrestrials that pervade nearly all of prehistoric and recorded human history, I found only one underlying, unifying, undisputable axiomatic common denominator that permeates all of these data, assuming that the subjective reality of beliefs of individual is acceptable evidence. This has been no universally agreed upon proof that UFOs and or extraterrestrial life forms exist whether based on government admission, physical evidence, circumstantial or subjective data. There are several deductions I can infer from the lack of agreement, government admission or physical evidence that such things are real that, if verified, may lead to irrevocable solutions to this mystery. Deduction. In spite of an enormous collection of subjective, circumstantial, and objective evidence of extraterrestrial activity on and around Earth, their existence, intentions, and the activities of extraterrestrials remain hidden and mysterious. Deduction. Universally agreed upon proof of extraterrestrial life based on subjective data, government admission, physical and circumstantial evidence, is subject to conflicting vested interest, which has made such proof unattainable. Collectively, these deductions beg the obvious question: if extraterrestrial life forms exist, why, if there are no consistent, forthright, open, interactive communication between mankind and extraterrestrials? Fortunately, subjective reality does not require evidence or proof. Therefore, I decided to write this book in order to pass along a subjective communication I received from Mrs. McElroy to other people who may be interested in it. Personally, I'm not assuming that anything I received from Mrs. McElroy is in any way authentic, with the exception of the envelope and the paper inside the envelope. I cannot substantiate any of it. Indeed, I can truly verify that there was ever such a person as Mrs. McElroy. Even then, a voice I heard over the phone in 1998. The voice could have been anyone. Personally, I do not have vested interest the UFO research. Yes, I've written a few books about immortal spiritual beings because I'm interested in the subject, but I haven't sold enough of these books to pay for the time it took to write them. It's a hobby. I earn my living as a small business consultant. It is not my intention to justify, explain, or remedy any disability, to perceive or understand the mysteries of extraterrestrial existence, UFOs, governments, existence, or spiritual abilities. Nor is it intended to educate, persuade, or promote to anyone that any of these phenomena exist. Furthermore, what I may or may not think about any of this is irrelevant. Moreover, I have burned all of the original documents, including the envelope I received from Mrs. McElroy. Do not want to spend the rest of my life being hunted by UFO researchers, government agents, grocery store tabloids reporters, UFO advocates, and bankers alike, or anyone else. Any proof or attempts to authenticate their assertion that Mrs. McElroy actually interviewed an alien in 1947 will have to be done by others. Ripley says, believe it or not. Footnote 3. I say, what true for you is true for you. Lawrence and Spencer, editor. About the source of material in this book. The content of this book is primarily accepted from the letter, interview transcripts, and personal notes I received from the late Matilda O'Donnell McElroy. Her letter to me asserts that this material is based on her recollection of communication with an alien being who spoke with her telepathically. During July and August of 1947, she interviewed an extraterrestrial being who she identifies as Errol, of whom she claims was and continues to be an officer, pilot, and engineer who was recovered from a flyer saucer that crashed near Roswell, New Mexico on July 8, 1947. Obviously, anyone reading anything about this most famous, or infamous, or all flying saucer, or alien encounter event must necessarily be highly suspicious regarding 1. The authenticity of the report, and 2. The credibility of the source of information, especially when it appears from the first time 6 years after the alleged event. I received the information letter from Mrs. McElroy on September 14th, 2007, together with a package of documents. The package contained three types of documents. 1. Handwritten notes in cursive, ordinarily lined 18 half 2 x11 school notebook paper, which I'm assuming had been written personally by Mrs. McElroy. 2. Notes typed on a manual typewriter on plain, white 20 pounds bound paper, which I'm assuming were proposed personally by her. At least both had the appearance and having been written in the same handwriting and or typed on the same typewriter consistently throughout. The writing in the notes I received also appeared to be the same as the writing on the address and return address of the manila envelope I received for Navan, Ireland, which was postmarked on 30 September 2007. Since I am not a forensic expert or handwriting analyst, my opinion in this matter is not a professionally qualified judgment. 3. Many pages of typewritten transcriptions of her interview with the alien. These were obviously typed on a different typewriter. These pages were typed on a different type of paper and showed apparent signs of age and repeating handling. None of these notes were assembled in any particular order or by date, except were indicated by a sentence or paragraph of preamble or explanation by her, or by extrapolation from the context of the page. Voltaire, footnote 4, is quoted as having said, "History is a Mississippi of lives." According to the comments made by the alien in the interview transcripts supplied by Mrs. McElroy, the fundamental lessons of history is that many gods have become men, but very few men, if any, have returned to being a god again. According to the alien being, Errol, if anything he, she, it supposedly communicated can be trusted, and if the translation or interpretation of this alleged communication is accurate, the history of this universe is a river of lies, down which the mind and freedom of all powerful, godlike, immortal spiritual beings ended and was lost in a sea of matter and mortality. Furthermore, according to the very direct and diplomatic statements made, which seem to express the personal opinion of the alien, of one were traveling the far reaches of the universe, in such of a place called Hell, it would be an accurate destruction of Earth and the inhabitants in its current condition. To further compound, complicate, and magnify the incredible source of the interview transcriptions I received from Mrs. McElroy is the fact that they are 1. Based almost entirely on telepathic communication between the alien and Mrs. McElroy. 2. Many of these interviews discuss paranormal activities of immortal spiritual beings. Of course, most scientific authorities are unwilling to acknowledge or perceive spiritual phenomena of any kind. The dictionary definition of the word paranormal is adjective. 1. Cannot be explained by scientific methods. 2. Supernatural, or seemingly outside normal sensory channels. By definition, people who use the word paranormal are 1. Not able to explain spiritual phenomena, and 2. Spiritual phenomena are outside of their normal sensory channels. In short, scientists suffer from their inability and or unwillingness to perceive and to or explain spiritual activities. Therefore, the discussion of spiritual activities or spiritual universes in this book are expected to be understood only by those who can and will perceive such things. According to the time spans related by the alien in several of their interviews, There are a number of compelling and heretofore unknown reasons that suggest the possibility that merely extraordinary miscalculations have been made by Earth scientists regarding the origins and antiquity of the universe, Earth, life forms, and events. Of course, this may or may not be accurate either, as time and its ugly stepchild, history, are largely subjective. However, it could be observed that, by contrast with the interstellar or macrocosmic time, the historical perspective of residents of Earth is limited to a relatively macroscopic period of time, compared to what are considered to be recent events in the chronology of an space-travel civilization, much less the entire time span of the universe. The geological record of Earth is reckoned, by the best cases of scientists, to be only about 4 billion years. The antiquity of Homo sapiens in the archaeology textbooks is estimated at only a few million years, at most. Even the entire biological spectrum is considered to have existed on this planet for only a few hundred million years, and by and large, the personal memory of individual beings of this planet is limited to only one lifetime. All other dates, events, of interpretations of events cited in this book are from terrestrial sources, with a purely subjective observations, conjectures, or inventions of human beings, including those of the author. It might therefore be credited or disregarded by the reader accordingly, considering the penchant of Earth's inhabitants to myopia, egocentricity, a general ignorance of the several universes in which we dwell. This book is intended to be an informal presentation of information provided to me 60 years after the fact, of a series of interviews between an alien spacecraft officer, pilot, and engineer, and an Army Air Force surgical nurse. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy biographical information. Since I have never met Mrs. McElroy in person and spoke with her on the phone once for about 20 minutes, I cannot vouch personally for her as a credible source of information. In fact, I cannot factually substantiate that such a person actually existed, except that I did speak with her on the phone, and I received handwritten material in the mail, which was sent from a physical address in Ireland. When I spoke to her on the phone in 1998, I was living in Florida at the time of our brief phone interview. Mrs. McElroy lived on Spotty Pride Drive in Glasgow, Montana. I know this because I mailed a copy of my book, The Oz Factors, to her as a gift after I was published in 1999. I was so she received the book, because she refers to it by name in the letter I received from the island and says that she read it. I did a little research on the internet about Glasgow, Montana, for my own interest. Glasgow was founded in 1887 as a railroad town that became popular during the 1930s because President FDR requested that for breakdown be constructed, that which became a huge source of employment for the Glasgow area. In the 1960s, the population flourished up to 12,000 because of Glasgow Air Force Base, SAK, which was used during the Vietnam conflict and the earlier part of the Cold War. The base was deactivated and closed in 1969. When I talked to Mrs. McElroy on the phone, she mentioned that she had been relocated there by the U.S. Army Air Force after her service was completed, and that's where she met her husband, who was an engineer. I don't think she mentioned his first name. However, she worked on building the Fort Peck Dam, which created the massive Fort Peck Lake. Although the town was finished in 1940, He was a great fisherman and outdoorsman, so he stayed in the area. I gathered that the Irish heritage of the place had something to do with it, but I didn't presume that point with her. I haven't been able to find any record of a McElroy who worked at the dam, but the personal records from that period are actually non-existent as far as can determine. I contacted her during my research from the Ospector's book because I was led to believe, through a very securities line of investigation, that this woman was suspected of having been involved with the alien contact at Area 51 on the Roswell crash site, or something similar, through a sequence of circumstantial inferences and accidental referrals. I actually found her number in the phone book and called her up just on the chance that there might really be such a person. Needless to say, when I called her, she was less than forthcoming in her response to my questions. However, I think she was impressed by my genuine and innocent sincerity to get information for my book and realized that I had no reference or financially motivated purposes or reasons to exploit her in any way. Nonetheless, she did not give me any useful information at that time, except to say that she had been in the army and was stationed in New Mexico in 1947. She could not discuss anything whatsoever about any kind of incident, as her life depending on remaining silent. Although this piqued my interest even more, it was futile to try to push her any further. So I gave up and forgot about her until last September, where I got the package from Ireland. I tried to contact her in Ireland at the return address on the package, but received no reply from her, nor have I been able to find anyone in Meath County, Ireland, who was acquainted with either of them, except the landlady, from whom they rented a room for a few weeks before their deaths, which seemed to have occurred simultaneously, although I have no real evidence of this. However, the postmark of the envelope she sent to me was stamped at the post office in Navan, called Meath, Ireland, on the date cited above, seen there in actual residence. According to Google Maps, at the return address shown on the envelope, I wrote to the address and advised by the home owner that bears Mrs. McElroy and her husband, whose name turns out to have been Paul, were both recently deceased. She said that the cremated remains of Mrs. McElroy and her husband were interred at St. Finian Cemetery of Athboy Road. Subsequently, I have not been able to find any record of her under the maiden name of O'Donnell, nor have I had any success at discovering any personal friend, family member, or document to confirm her birth, medical education, or marital record, marriage, or death, with the exception of her landlady in Ireland, who is not a relative. Just before her death, I suspect that this is the false identity given to her by the military when she left Roswell, as mentioned in her notes. In either case, it seems likely that her identity and all evidence of her has been expunged from the public record. I understand that certain government agencies are adept at covering up evidence or making records and people disappear. It seems likely that this has been done in her case. Due to the highly sensitive nature of the Roswell incident, and consistent with the rest of the alleged cover-up, inasmuch as I do not have any further information to verify or substantiate that any of the notes of these interviews sent to me by Mrs. McElroy are in any way factual, other than what I have already mentioned. Let the reader beware and take heed accordingly. The letter from Mrs. McElroy. August 12, 2007. Dear Lawrence, I am typing this letter to you on my old Underwood typewriter that I bought after I was discharged from the army. Somehow it seems like a fitting contrast to the subject of this letter and the documents you will find enclosed in this envelope. The last time I spoke to you was about 8 years ago. During your brief telephone interview with me, you asked me to assist you with the research for the Oz Factors book. You were writing because you suspected that I might know something that would help your investigation into the possibility that extraterrestrial beings may have influenced the history of Earth. When we spoke, I told you that I did not have any information that I could share with you about anything. Since then, I have read your book and found it very interesting and compelling. You are obviously a man who has done his homework and who could understand my own experiences. Thinking a lot about our illusion of the old philosopher, whom you paraphrased in our phone conversation. With great power comes great responsibility. Although I don't think power is pertinent in my life, or to my reasons for sending you the enclosed documents. You certainly did get me thinking about my responsibility. I had reconsidered my position for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is my realization that you were right. I do have a responsibility to myself, at least. I cannot possibly tell you the personal hell, footnote 5, of ethical resolution and spiritual ambivalence I have endured since 1947. I do not want to keep playing the game, or maybe I shouldn't have, for the rest of eternity. Many men have been killed to extinguish the possibility of revealing the knowledge I have helped to withhold from society until now. Only a small handful of people on earth have seen and heard what I have had the burden of keeping secret for 60 years. All those years I thought that I had been entrusted with a great deal of confidence by the powers that be in our government, although I have often left that power is greatly misguided, to protect mankind from the certain knowledge that not only do intelligent extraterrestrial life forms exist, but that they have and continue to aggressively monitor and invade the lives of everyone on earth every day. Therefore, I think the time has come to pass along my secret knowledge to someone I think will understand it. I don't think it will be responsible of me to take the knowledge I have into the silent afterlife, beyond reach or recognition. I think there is a greater good to be served than protected the vested interest, from whom this information is considered a matter of national security, whatever that means, and it's therefore justification for making it top secret. Footnote 6. Also, I am now 83 years old. I have decided to leave this body, which has outlasted its usefulness to me, using a painless method of self-administered euthanasia. Footnote 7. I have a very few months to live, and nothing to fear or lose. So I have moved away from Montana, where my husband and I lived for most of my life, to spend our two remaining days in a lovely rented upstairs bedroom in a house in the homeland of my husband's family in County Meath, Ireland. Footnote 8. I will die not far from the great month, but north. Footnote 9. And doth the fair mount of darkness. These are sacred cairns, or massive stone structures that were erected about 3700 BCE and decorated with indecipherable hieroglyphs. About the same times as pyramids and other inexplicable stones monuments were being built all over the earth. I am also not far from the Hill of Tara. Footnote 10. That was once the ancient seat of power in Ireland, when 132 kings are said to have reigned in the prehistoric and historic times. In ancient Irish religion and mythology, this was the sacred place of dwelling for the gods and was the entrance of the other world. Saint Patrick came to Tara to conquer the ancient religion of the pagans. He may have suppressed their religion's practices in the area, but he certainly did not have any impact on the gods who brought this civilization to Earth, as you will discover when you read the documents enclosed. Therefore, this is a fitting location for my departure from this unholy world and final release from the burdens of this life. The crystal clear perspective of hindsight has revealed a higher purpose to me, assisting the survival of the planet, all living beings and life forms in our galaxy. The status quo of our government and establishment has been to protect the people from knowledge of such matters. In fact, the only protection afforded by ignorance and secrecy is to hide the private agenda of those in power to enslave others, and by doing so, to disarm every perceived enemy and ally for superstition and stupidity. Therefore, I have enclosed the original and only existing copies of my personal notes and reflections on a matter which I have kept hidden from anyone, even my own family. I have also enclosed my copies of typed transcripts created by the stenographer who transcribed all of my interviews with the alien Sarsa pilot after each interview was finished. I do not have any copies of the tape recordings that were made of my interview reports. No one until now knows that I was able to secretly retain copies of the official interview transcripts. Now I am entrusting these documents to your discretion to impart to the world in any form or manner you see fit. My only request is that you do so in a way that will not threaten your own life. All well-being is possible. If you were to incorporate these notes of my experiences into a work of fiction, such as a novel, the factual nature of the material could be easily dismissed or discredited by any agency for whom national security is used as a personal shield against scrutiny and injustice. In so doing, you could disavow any knowledge of their true origin and claim that is a fictitious work of your imagination. Whoever said that truth is stranger than fiction was right as rain. To most people, all of this will be unbelievable. Unfortunately, beliefs are not a reliable criteria for reality. Also, I am sure that if you were to show those notes to anyone that would prefer physical, economic, or spiritual slavery over freedom, the subject matter contained in them would seem quite objectionable. If you attempted to publish the documents as a matter of factual reporting in a newspaper or on the evening TV news, they would be rejected out of hand as the work of a cook. The very nature of these documents make them unbelievable and therefore discreditable. Conversely, the release of this information is potentially catastrophic for certain political, religious, and economic vested in interest. These documents contain information which is quite relevant to your interest and investigations into alien encounters and paranormal experience. They use your analogy in the Also Factors book. I can honestly say that the few factual reports that have been made by others about alien influences and only a gentle breeze in the eye of an apocalyptic hurricane swelling around Earth. There really are reasons, are wicked witches and flying mannequins in this universe. This information, which has been suspected and or speculated and put by so many for so long, had been constantly denied by mainstream media, academia, and the military-industrial complex. Footnote 11. That President Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address. As you know, in July 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield, RAF, footnote 12, issued a press release stating the personnel from the field's 509th Bomb Group had recovered a crashed flying disc from a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico, sparking intense media interest. Footnote 30. Later the same day, the Commander General of the 8th Air Force, footnote 40, stated that Major Jesse Marcel, who was involved with the original recovery of the debris, had recovered only the tattered remnants of a weather balloon. The true facts of the incident have been suppressed by the United States government since then. You may note that I was enlisted in the U.S. Women Army Air Force. Was. Footnote 13. Magical Corps, which was a part of the U.S. Army back then, was assigned to the 509th Bomb Group as a flight nurse. Footnote 16. By the time of the incident, when the news that there had been a crash was received at the base, I was asked to accompany Mr. Cabot, the counterintelligence officer, footnote 17, to the crash site as a driver of his vehicle, and to render any needed emergency medical assistance to any survivors is necessary. Footnote 19. Therefore, I briefly witnessed the wreckage of an alien spacecraft, as well as the remains of the several alien personnel aboard the craft who were already dead. When we arrived, I learned that the one of the personnel on board the craft had survived the crash and was conscious and apparently uninjured. The conscious alien was similar in appearance, but not the same as the others. Footnote 19. None of the other personnel present could communicate with the survivor, as the being did not communicate verbally or by any recognizable sign. However, while I examined the patient for injury, I immediately detected and understood that the alien being was attempting to communicate with me by mental images or telepathic thoughts. Footnote 20, which projected directly from the mind of the being. I immediately reported this phenomenon to Mr. Carrot. At no other person present could perceive these thoughts, and the alien seemed able with willing to communicate with me. It was decided, as a brief consultation with a senior officer, that I would accompany the surviving alien back to the base. This was partly due to the fact that I was a nurse and could attend to the physical needs of the alien, as well as serve as a non-threatening communicator and companion. After all, I was the only woman at the site and the only one who was not armed. I was thereafter assigned permanently to serve as a companion of the alien at all times. Footnote 21. My duty was to communicate with and interview the alien, and to make a complete report of all that I discovered to command the authorities. Subsequently, I was supplied with a specific list of questions provided to me by military and non-military personnel, which I was to interpret from the alien and record the responses to the questions provided. I'll also accompany the alien at all times during medical testing and the many other examinations to which the alien was subjected by staff from numerous government agencies. I was given a promotion in rank to Senior Master Sergeant to improve my security rating and to increase my pay grade to $54 a month to $138 a month for this very unusual assignment. I performed these duties from July 7 through August 1947, at which time the alien died or departed the body, as you will read about in my notes. Although I was never left entirely alone with the alien, as there were always military personnel, intelligence agency people, and a variety of other officials present from time to time. I did have uninterrupted access to and communication with the alien being for nearly 6 weeks. Hereinafter is an overview and summary of my personal recollections of conversations with the alien craft pilot, who I came to know by the identity of Errol. I feel that it is my duty at this time, in the best interest of the citizens of Earth, to reveal what I have learned from my interaction with Errol during those 6 weeks on the anniversary of her death or departure 60 years ago. Although I served a nurse in the Army Air Force, I'm not a pilot or technician. Further, I did not have any direct contact in the spacecraft or other materials recovered from the crash site at that time or thereafter. To that degree, it must be taken into consideration that my understanding of the communication I had with Errol as based on my own subjective ability to interpret the meaning of the thoughts and mental images I was able to perceive. Our communication did not consist of spoken language in the conventional sense. Indeed, the body of the alien had no mouth through which to speak. Our communication was by telepathy. At first, I could not understand Errol very clearly. I could perceive images, emotions, and impressions, but it was difficult for me to express this verbally. Once Errol learned the English language, she was able to focus her thoughts more precisely, using symbols and meanings of words I could understand. Learning the English language was done as a favor to me. It was more for my own benefit than hers. By the end of our interview sessions, and increasingly since then, I have become more comfortable with telepathic communication. I have become more adept at understanding Errol's thoughts. I thought they are my own. Somehow her thoughts become my thoughts. Her emotions are my emotions. However, this is limited by her willingness and intention to share her own personal universe with me. She is able to be selective about what communication I am allowed to receive from her. Likewise, her experience, training, education, relationships, and purposes are uniquely her own. This is the symbol of the domain. The domain is a race or civilization of which Errol, the alien I interviewed, is an officer, pilot, and engineer serving in the Domain Expeditionary Force. The symbol represents the origin and unlimited boundary of the known universe, united and integrated into a vast civilization under the control of the domain. Arrow is currently stationed at the base in the asteroid belt, which she refers as a space station in the solar system of Earth. First and foremost, Errol is herself. Secondarily, she voluntarily serves as an officer, pilot, and engineer in the Domain Expeditionary Force. In that capacity, she has duties and responsibilities, and she is at leave to come and go as she pleases also. Please accept this material and make it known to as many people as possible. I repeat that it is not my intention to endanger your life with the possession of this material, nor do I really expect to you believe any of it either. However, I do sense that you can appreciate the value that such knowledge may have to those who are willing and able to face the reality of it. Mankind needs to know the answers to questions which are contained in these documents. Who we are, where did we come from, what is our purpose on Earth, is mankind alone in the universe? If there is intelligent life elsewhere, why have they not contacted us? It is vital that people understand the devastating consequences to our spiritual and physical survival if we fail to take effective action to undo the long-standing and pervasive effects of alien intervention on Earth. Perhaps the information in these documents will serve as a stepping stone to a better future for mankind. I hope that you can be more clever, creative, and courageous in the distribution of this information than I have been. May the gods bless you and keep you. Mrs. Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, Senior Master Sergeant Women's Army Air Force, Medical Corps retired, 100 Trotan Heights, Navan, Myth, Myth Island.